Congratulations on your book idea, and I'm very proud of you for deciding to hire a ghostwriter to help you write it. But now you need to know how to share your story with the ghostwriter so they can do the job you're paying them to do. Hi, I'm Naomi. I've been helping my clients write and publish their books for 19 years, and today I'm going to give you some of my best tips on how you can share your story idea with your ghostwriter. First, you can always share your idea verbally. Some ghostwriters work through a series of phone calls that are recorded that they then transcribe and they turn into your book. Other ghostwriters, myself included, will use video chats like Zoom, something along those lines, to get your story from you so that you can talk to us and tell us your story. Now, a lot of times in these types of interviews, the ghostwriter is going to ask you a series of questions, and they're not always going to feel relevant to you. It's not a matter of sitting down and the ghostwriter saying, okay, tell me everything. And then you're just expected to know everything. And depending on the topic, this is usually done in a series of interviews. Why? Because have you ever sat in a class or in a crowd and everyone is going around talking about themselves, and then when they get to you and it's your turn to introduce yourselves, you immediately forget everything about yourself ever? Yeah, it's really awkward when that happens with a ghostwriter as well. We're not going to put you on the spot like that. But what we're doing in those cases is we are pulling as much out of you as we possibly can, even if it's a thread that feels like it's going off sideways somewhere, so we can see what's relevant, what's not, what we can add to your book, what needs to be in your book, and how we can strengthen the impact of that book. Not only that, but the more we get you talking, the more natural you'll sound to us. And that's what we really need to do, is to be able to hear your voice and your story from your point of view. Now, I can't speak for every ghostwriter, but for a lot of my clients, when they first sit down to talk to me, they feel very stiff. And so these interview questions and just talking helps loosen them up a lot, even if they are completely irrelevant to the book. I get them talking a little bit, and they sound less like the author persona that they feel like they have to be, and more like themselves. And that's really the whole point. Another way to share your story idea with your ghostwriter is to share the stuff you've already got. Depending on the type of book that you're writing, maybe you have drafts that you've already started and never finished, or maybe you have an old story that you wrote back in middle school or high school or something that you're trying to revamp and turn into a novel now. Outlines that you've put together. I've had nonfiction authors send me their courses, their email newsletter, podcast transcripts, even their blog posts. One client actually sent me a box of napkins. I'm not kidding. We signed the contract. He said, okay, I'll send you my notes. And about 3 to 4 days later, I received a box of cocktail napkins because he'd gone drinking the night before and had scribbled all of his ideas out on these cocktail napkins and shoved them all into a box and sent them to me. The point is, you probably have a lot more content than you realize. Whatever form that you have that content in, send it along to your ghostwriter if you think it's even remotely relevant. They will help sift through it, sort through it, pick out the relevant spots through the context of your goals and book idea, and then they're going to put it all together, and then they'll come to you to help fill in the gaps. Now, what about an NDA? Non-disclosure agreements. How do they pertain to ghostwriters? When do you sign them? Do you need to sign them? Can you have them ahead of time? And before we go too deep into the NDAs, I need to give you this little disclaimer. I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. So please, if you are presented with an NDA, do more than just watch this video before you sign it. I recommend you contact an actual lawyer, read through it carefully to understand what you're signing and what that NDA allows for before you sign anything. Okay, so NDAs. Most ghostwriters include an NDA as part of their contract. And for the most part, the NDA is pretty straightforward. We as the ghostwriter cannot divulge the details of the project we're working on or the clients we're working with. For example, I have worked with New York Times bestseller and USA Today's. Cool, huh? Now, a lot of authors think about the NDA and they think about it in terms of that ghostwriter stealing that story idea. But that's not really the case. It's more about protecting the relationship that you have with your reader. Why can't I talk about my time working with on just one of their books, even though they have 7 other books out that I did not work on? I'm not saying which book, right? It still pulls them all into question. Writing a book and telling your story creates an intimate relationship between you, the author, and your reader. When you stick a ghostwriter's name on there, it's like having someone watch you in your most intimate moments with that person. It's just awkward and weird. Now, I know there are a lot of people who feel like bringing ghostwriters to the forefront and going ahead and giving them a byline or some sort of credit on the page somewhere is something that we should work for. And I'm not 100% against it, but as it stands right now, the NDA, that is what we're working to protect, that relationship between you, the author, and your reader. So if the NDA is part of the contract, what about before the contract? What about during your interviews, during your consultations? Most ghostwriters, myself included, do not use an NDA as part of the consultation process before the contract is signed. During that consultation phase, you and the ghostwriter are interviewing each other, trying to get a sense of whether or not you can work together, whether or not you like each other, getting a sense of the project in general, maybe getting some advice and some strategy about how to move forward with the project. And all of that is covered more under client confidentiality than it is NDA. Although it's not quite the same thing, I tend to liken it more to like client privilege that a lawyer might extend to their clients. It's not written in stone. It's not a signed contract or agreement, but it is understood as part of the process. And part of the reason you don't need a contract for that consultation phase is because at that point, you're not sharing any of your intellectual property. You're not sharing the details of your story, just a general idea and premise, maybe the genre, but you're not going into details and you're not sharing any of the pieces that would be covered under copyright. Ultimately, how you share your story idea with your ghostwriter is going to be between you and your ghostwriter. Chances are they have a system that they have developed and refined over the years to make it as easy as possible for you. And if they have to adjust, well, the good news is most ghostwriters are pretty flexible in that. Now, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, legal contracts, NDAs, and the writing itself, how much is this all going to cost me? Good news. I have the answer to that and so many other questions in my playlist.